Hi people, this is a tutorial now I set up my Poecilotheria terrariums. What you'll need is coke bark with hopefully a hollowing or some kind of tube structure to them. You will need eco-earth, plenty of it, and also preferably a glue gun for gluing together pieces of bark, and also what you can also use to camouflage the glue is dried sphagnum moss, which I've drawn down into dust, so it just covers the glue, so you don't end up with like the glue marks you see at the base here, because it's pretty ugly. Okay, here we go. As this species lives in hollowing of trees and old trees, I've decided to use these type of barks, which is basically it's cork bark, but if you have a good look round in expos and what have you, you should be able to find actual pieces that are already hollow, which is perfect for this species. However, if you can't, and you can only find semi-tube structures like this, what you can do is combine them with other pieces, whereas this piece is quite small and Poecilotheria get quite big and there's not much of actually a hide, most of that's exposed. What we can do is combine pieces of wood and give them a hell of a lot more darkness and hide-in space, which is what I shall be doing in this tutorial. Okay, to do this you'll need a glue gun and some sphagnum moss. I'm also using my acrylic terrariums, which are 8 by 8 by 16 inches at the back there. So here we go. Before we glue our wood, what we need to do is decide and test to see if the wood fits nicely into the actual terrarium itself. Before we put anything in it, any eco-earth, anything, we need to check that there's plenty of room for this to fit, but also what I tend to find is make sure there's enough gap around the side of the wood and the backs, because what tends to happen is crickets, if it's too close to the edge like this, crickets will run up and hide in the gap there and the tarantula won't be able to get to them and they just die and rot, and you get all sorts of problems then with mites or what have you in the corners. So make sure there's enough space that you can get your hand around all edges before you actually do this. Okay, and as this shape fits rather nicely, as you can see, that will be good to glue in that position actually. So what I'm going to do, I'll keep it like this, hold it together, exactly like this, and now get my glue gun and glue this in place. Right, what you do, oh, 1 second, sorry, need to get my sphagnum moss ready. What I tend to do is dry this down into a bit of a dust, because it's going to be stuck to the glue. If it's moist, I mean, it'll still stick, but it's just a bit whatever. So yeah, so when it's a fine powder, it can then just be glued straight to the actual bit itself. Okie dokie. So do we like that in place? Yep, right, okay, here we go. Find the edges where the glue can attach both pieces of wood, and be generous with the glue, because you don't want this thing to collapse and possibly injure your tarantula. And now whilst the glue is still wet and very hot, be careful with your hands, just sprinkle gently on the edges as you can see, and it'll just finally just dab it. Again, watching your fingers. So what you basically end up with is an invisible marklet. You can't even see where the join is. So what I'll do, I'll continue to do the other pieces, like here where it also joins. So just fill that in there. These glue guns are great, by the way. Well worth their money. Again, sprinkle on the edges. Like so. Go watch, this stuff is stringy as hell. It just sticks to everything. Oh. See, it comes apart quite easily until you've stuck it all. Right, I need a heck of a lot more glue here. That's it. Okay. Just fill in the bits. There you go, so you get a nice flush edge. Again, watch your fingers. This will take your skin off. It's very, very hot. There you go. Get some nice little shapes in there, look. So get some good webbing in there. That'd be beautiful. Check that out. What an amazing bit of wood. Plenty of space down there to hide. I'm just going to do a little bit more and then move on to the next section. What I like to do as well, you see where this has been cut with a machine, so you get a straight edge. Now obviously nature wouldn't do that, and I just hate solid edges, so what I like to do is I like to make the wood look as natural and as the way nature would do it as possible, so it looks more broken. So in order to camouflage that edge, again, you don't have to do this, but it won't hurt. Just add a bit of glue and just a bit of moss to cover that, so it doesn't look so machined as such. So you get a nice natural edging to the wood, as opposed to a man-made saw cut one. You see, so you just get a bit more natural. And I think the more natural, to me anyway, the better. So yes, that's looking pretty good. Plenty of spaces for it to run up and hide. Again, with this glue gun, you see this string? Try your best to get these off, because if you look down in there, you see all this? You see, that'll just get in the way of the tarantula when he's building up his web. So, yep, just clear away all excess glue, and that is pretty solid now. Absolutely solid. So I'm just going to put a bit more moss around here on this edge, and I think it's pretty much on then to start to set it up. Okay, what I like to do also, as the wood is just wood, I like to put moss in the gaps of the wood as well, because this tends to lock in a bit of moisture, therefore making the terrarium more humid. So just find a gap around the edge, run a slight bead of glue into the gaps, and again a bit of moss which will absorb water like a sponge really, and just place that down in there. just dab it softly. Again, watch your fingers. You see how it gets a bit stringy. Tap off the excess. There you go, so now you have a slight mossy edge, which, as I said, will keep in moisture. And plus it's better decoration, I think. I think it just looks better. Again, we'll do a bit down here. There you go. Right. Tap off excess. A bit more down here. Might as well use up this moss whilst I've prepared it. So you see how the moss now is starting to look a bit more natural on the wood. Looks great. Alright, just give it a tap, like so. See how it gets stringy? Creates its own web look, this glue. It's very, very fine. Very fine. Right then, do a bit more on the background here. Again, make sure the moss is dry. It's sphagnum moss it is, by the way. But the reason I say that is because when it's wet, for obvious reasons, it doesn't stick to the wood as well. And obviously when the moss dries out, it tends to shrink. So it kind of falls away from the glue after it dries a little, so it's a bit of a nightmare. And plus when it's dry, because it's brittle, it breaks down to this fine dust. You get a much better coverage in the gaps. So yeah, but again, it's up to you. There's no right and wrong way of doing this. I'm not saying you have to do it this way. This is just the way I do things, and I keep getting asked about my setups and how I do them, and this is it basically. This is my version of how I do things. Again, it's up to you what you do. I'm not telling you what to do. That looks amazing. Also, what I've done incidentally, which I forgot to tell you, with this first bit of wood, I've glued it to a base on a piece of glass and just basically peeled it away, so you get a nice flat edge, so the wood naturally will stand almost upright on its own. So it's pretty straight to the floor. But again, it's up to you. By the time you've dropped it down into your eco-earth, I mean, you can rest it against a tank, but personally I prefer them to, if they can stand up on their own without the aid of the corner or the edge of your tank. Again, because crickets can hide in the gaps when they, on the parts they touch, then I think it's just better if it can stand unaided. But yes, so I don't know about you guys, but this is looking pretty damn good at the minute. A bit more. Getting that, almost there. And again, the top edge, when it's all broken, I just cover that in a bit of moss, because I just prefer it that way. Personal preference. Finish off the edging. This is going to be for my Poecilotheria Metallicas actually. They're growing pretty fast now, and I won't be transferring them today, but They are currently in pre-molt, and the next molt they will probably need moving. So I thought I'd get this done whilst I can, so that when they do molt and they're ready to move, the tank's good to go, all set up, and that's that really. Hot. This stuff gets everywhere. Okay, right, as far as I'm concerned, that is more or less done. This glue gets, look at it, don't know if you can see that, it's just string, it gets everywhere, look at it. But, right, see, nice natural edge now, beautiful bit of bark, lovely. Actually, I like to give them a good display, as tarantulas are display pets. You shouldn't really handle them. You can, but I'd never handle Poecilotheria. Some people do, and that's their choice, but it's not mine. But yes, check that out. Very good bit of wood, that. He's gonna love that. Right, let's check that goes in first. Excellent. Check that out. That's gonna look great. Okay, right then, next up, Eco-Earth. Right. Here's some I prepared earlier. So what we're going to do is naturally take the wood out. Get our Eco-Earth and generous amount. Just begin with what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to fill more around the back first, because that'll be the hardest spot to get to, and lay it pretty flush. I'm trying to avoid the middle at the moment because I don't want to fill in too much where the centre of the wood's going to go, because that needs to stay pretty upright. I'll just put enough down there, because I can always fill the hollow up of the bark a little after I've placed the piece of wood in. Right then, actually let's just get a lot more. By the way, the reason it's steaming up is because I use warm water for my Eco-Earth. It tends to absorb quicker than it does if you add cold water. To pat that down a little. So make it quite firm. Right. What we need to do now is, if you can see that from there, is kind of pack it down to help it stand on its own, as you would pot in a tree in your garden. Just kind of really pack it in. Stuff it under. Real good. There you go. Now just fill up around it. Be generous with the eco earth, because the more you put in, the more moisture it will hold, and plus it'll fill up the gaps around the base so that it's nice and dark when the tarantula goes down into the base of its hide. So always a good thing. Looking good already. Great, look at that. Not cool. Very hard to see with the light, sorry, I'm in the kitchen. It's sorry for the lack of videos lately, but just been a little bit busy. But I am going to start doing more, a lot more. Okay. Right. So I've left enough space at the front here for a water dish, which will be put down in the front here at the side so they can run down. I don't have space. Well, I could probably put a dish up in the corner here, but I probably won't. To be honest with you, when I spray them, they tend to drink more off the glass than out of a dish anyway, so as most of my arborels do. My Poecilotheria barely ever drink from a tub, the water dish. They just tend to take the droplets off the wood. So, right. Cool. Very cool. What you can do is put a bit of moss on the ground as well, if you want to. I tend to begin with, but it ends up drying up, and crickets tend to hide in it. And the less place you can give a cricket to hide, the better, if I'm honest. Because if they die in the tank, again, you get mites, all sorts of nasty things up there. Right, and check that out. How good does that look? Nice little entrance to the front there. Plenty of visual so I can see down to the base. Obviously when that's covered, there'll be enough space for it. Plenty of darkness down there. Brilliant. Couple of exits. And what I'm going to use in this terrarium as foliage is probably an orchid. I like to use orchids that have trouble reflowering, because basically you don't plant orchids, you kind of just sit them on the ground. And that way they're easier to remove if they start to die or rot or what have you, because I don't like disturbing the pokies once they're in there, for obvious reasons. Okay, next up, plant. Right, here we are. This is basically a living orchid, believe it or not, that I've taken out of a little pot, and they just need spraying now and again. So what I like to do is just place the orchid kind of at the front, cover a bit of a gap. I like to make the plants accessible, if I'm honest, because if it's at the back and you need to take it out, absolute nightmare. But if it's at the front, this as well covers this space, so it gives it a bit more darkness for him or her. Hopefully it's a her. If it's a Metallica, that'd be great. But been unable to sex this species so far, sadly. But I'm hoping one of them is female. I have two, and they do have different growth rates. so I'm hoping I have one of each sex, at least. But yes, that, my friends, is that. I'll probably have a little plate with this plant, see what works best. I don't know, I'll put it down here. Yeah, that's better, much better. Plus as well, with living plants, you need to water them quite frequently, give them a mist, what have you. So it's almost easier, I think, to have them a bit at the front. Just so you can just spray it right there without having to disturb anything else. If anything else doesn't need spraying, then just easy access at the front here. And that, my friends, is my Poecilotheria tutorial. And this works with most Poecilotheria, if I'm honest. This is how I did my Regalis, my Subfusca, and now my Metallicas. But a transfer video will be coming up in the coming month, I think, because my my Poecilotheria will molt them. And this will be their lovely new enclosures. So, here we go. Let's have a good look at it, and then I'll get on with the next one. Right, here we are, people. Check that out. You get a nice gap going all the way around. There's a nice little escape route up there. So there's escape there. Nice little hole in there. Nice big hole in there. And no places for crickets to hide. Check that out. Sorry for the reflections. It's acrylic for you. But yeah, I think he's gonna really like that. So I'll give this a spray, and job done. Woohoo! Also, here's another one I've done. Again, as this wasn't a decent bit of tube bark, I did exactly the same thing. Welded it, stuck it together with the glue. Used sphagnum moss to get a decent shape, and as you can see, that's great for Poecilotheria as well. I'll probably end up sticking one more piece on the back here just to seal it up, to turn it into a full tube. You can also use this. These are Extra Terra, just basically like the long vine pieces they sell, fake plants, foliage of course. But what I tend to do is I pluck them off the plastic vine they come on because I think they're ugly, and I stick them in the gaps in the wood. You can just pop them through, and you can just dot them all around the branch. That way you get a nice green foliage without actually having to look after plants, which looks good. But yes, and here's the next bit of wood I shall be using on my next Metallica terrarium, which is perfect. I'm not going to do anything to this. I won't do a tutorial on this one, but it'll basically be the same setup, you know, hollow branch. And that is that. Well, hope that helps people. Any questions, let me know. Okay, cheers then, bye.